Did you know that on average, black men in the US receive sentences that are 19.1% longer than those of white men convicted for the same crimes? Additionally, 15.8% of the black students reported experiencing race-based bullying or harassment. On the flip side, African American owned businesses are the fastest growing segment of the woman-owned business market, starting up at a rate 6 times higher than the national average. Despite the progress we've made, the nation still grapples with its legacy of racism. Identifying the most racist towns in America is a challenging task, and this list might surprise, upset, confuse, or discomfort some readers. Conversely, for some, this list may not be comprehensive enough. It's essential to remember not everyone in these towns is racist, and there are activists across the nation dedicated to fighting for racial justice. Compiling this list is a complex endeavor, as larger cities may naturally have more hate crimes, but this could also be due to their greater diversity and openness. Therefore, this list will consist of a combination of anecdotal evidence, statistical data, and how a town's historical relationship with race continues to influence it today. If your town appears on the list, perhaps it's an opportunity for you to be the catalyst for the change that is needed. After all, once we are aware of these issues, we can strive to make improvements. Number 10. Pulaski, Tennessee. Pulaski, Tennessee holds a dark historical distinction as the birthplace of Ku Klux Klan. This infamous organization was founded on December 24, 1865, in the aftermath of the Civil War, the South's defeat, and the Reconstruction era. 6 former Confederate officers were among the Klan's founders. What began as a small vigilante group conducting night rides in hoods eventually transformed into an invisible empire that terrorized, burned, and killed recently freed black individuals, abolitionists, and sympathetic white allies. Despite the hateful intentions behind it, a plaque commemorating the Klan's birth still hangs in the old Pulaski courtroom. Today, many Pulaski residents argue that they support the plaque because they view it as a representation of chivalry in the face of the Union, rather than an endorsement of racism. However, this sentiment does not sit well with many Black Americans who may find themselves in Pulaski. Some local residents are actively working to combat this troubling reputation through social activism and artistic expression. For instance, local artist Bernice Davidson established the Unsung Heroes Project, creating murals that honor Pulaski's heroes, including one dedicated to the Trail of Tears Museum, which educates about the Indian Removal Act and the forced displacement of Native Americans from their lands on a deadly journey to Oklahoma. There is still work to be done in addressing racism in the United States, including renaming towns and sites that carry offensive or racially insensitive names. According to the U.S. Board of Geographic Names, there are numerous sites with names like Squaw, an offensive term for Native Americans, as well as the name Negro, Chinaman, Redman, and more. Additionally, there are 12 countries named after Confederate President Jefferson Davis or Southern Civil War General Robert E. Lee. It's important to consider the impact on marginalized communities, such as Black Americans who attend schools named after prominent Confederate leaders and slaveholders. Akin to a Jewish person having to attend a school named after Hitler. While there is still much progress to be made, it's also important to acknowledge the significant strides that have been achieved in addressing these issues. Number 9. Honolulu. Now the spotlight shines in Hawaii, where the very historical context of its integration into the United States is reflected in contemporary hate crimes affecting the city. Hawaii's origin traces back in its initial settlement by Polynesians around 400th century, who inhabited small fishing villages. However, the European arrival, marked by James Cook's landing in 1778, heralded significant changes. Between 791 and 1810, King Kamehameha succeeded in unifying the entire archipelago into a single kingdom. Yet, the arrival of Christian missionaries and American businessmen from 1820 onward brought disease and conquest. When Cook first arrived, there were 300,000 native Hawaiians, but by 1853, their population has plummeted to just 70,000. In 1893, motivated by the economic prospects offered by the island's sugar plantations, the U.S. annexed Hawaii and toppled the kingdom. Queen Liukalini, the last Hawaiian ruler, was dethroned, imprisoned, and compelled to abdicate. Hawaii became the U.S. state in 1959. These historical events has cast a long shadow of racism that persists in Honolulu today. In Honolulu, on the island of Oahu, this inequality manifests itself in the severe lack of affordable housing, despite Native Hawaiians representing only 10% of Oahu's population. They make up 51% of the island's unhoused population. The surge in Western tourism, predominantly from the mainland, has driven up cost on Oahu to such an extent that Native Hawaiians, who have called the islands home for over 1,400 years now, find themselves disproportionately represented among the homeless. It's an unfortunate reality that many tourists fail to realize that their vacations in paradise contribute to this underbelly of racism. However, there are ways for tourists to be responsible and mindful of these issues when visiting Honolulu. One crucial step is to support local establishments instead of opting for chain hotels on Waikiki Beach. Seek out vacation homes owned by the Native Hawaiians and contribute to the local economy by conducting research in advance and spending money at Native-owned shops, restaurants, and culture centers. By doing so, visitors can help address the disparities and racial issues that continue to affect Honolulu. Number 8. Milwaukee. Wisconsin is frequently ranked among the best states to reside in due to its low crime rates, excellent healthcare access, and quality school system. However, as the nation grapples more intensely with issues of racism, cities like Milwaukee are compelled to question whether these positive attributes genuinely benefit all their residents. In Milwaukee, the situation is particularly noteworthy. Despite its outstanding schools, black students are suspended at a rate exceeding twice the national average, even for similar infractions as their white counterparts. Additionally, many Americans tend to perceive Wisconsin as a whole as predominantly white, when in reality, Black Americans constitute 40% of Milwaukee's population. Paradoxically, Milwaukee's schools exhibit the most substantial achievement gap in the country. Racial disparities extend beyond the educational system. Wisconsin incarcerates more black men than any other state, and in Milwaukee County, over half of the black men in their 30s and 40s have had contact with the criminal justice system. These inequalities are in a part of a consequence of historical policies that have since been prohibited. Number 7. Crown Heights, Brooklyn. A neighborhood within New York City finds itself on this list. While New York City as a whole is often regarded as a symbol of racial progress and enlightenment, there's been a disturbing uptick in hate crimes, up by a staggering 76%. While some of these increase might be attributed to new efforts encouraging people to report hate crimes, it's still disheartening news for major cities that take pride in considering themselves less racist than others. Having a larger populations or greater diversity should never be an excuse for an increase in hate crimes. If these cities truly embodied the progressiveness they often claim, they wouldn't be in such high prevalence of hate crimes. Number 6. Rochelle, Georgia. Realistically, the issue of racism extends beyond just one town and encompasses the entire country of Wilcox. Before anyone takes offense, it's important to acknowledge that the youth of this town have played a pivotal role in bringing this issue to the forefront and compelling the community to confront its historical legacy. Wilcox Country is situated in the heart of the state, a place where tradition holds significant sway, with churches on nearly every corner of condemned with churches on nearly every corner and Confederate flags proudly displayed. Shockingly, until 2014, the schools in this area still hosted segregated proms. Yes, it's true. Even in the year 2014, several rural Georgia schools continued the practice of segregated proms. How was this allowed in public schools? You might wonder. The answer is quite simple. The schools themselves did not host integrated proms. During the period of desegregation, many schools chose not to hold proms to avoid organizing integrated dances. However, it has the students of Wilcox Country High School, Rochelle, Georgia, who decided they had enough. Instead, parents and students took matters into their own hands, hosting separate proms, one for white students and another for black students. In a country where 35% of the population is black, it's difficult to fathom that, despite efforts to combat racism, Georgia was still witnessing segregated proms. Number 5. Vidor, Texas. Vidor is a small town located in the southeastern corner of the state, just to east of Houston. Vidor gained notoriety as one of the many communities in the United States known as Sundown Town, where Black Americans were not allowed within the borders after nightfall. In some of these towns, there were posted signs explicitly stating "whites only after dark." Despite attempts of Vidor's mayors to change its reputation, many Black Americans still avoid stopping in Vidor altogether. According to 2020 census, Vidor has a population of approximately 6,000. Vidor has a population of approximately 8,600 with only 39 residents identifying as Black. In 2020, following the death of George Floyd, a Black Lives Matter march was scheduled to the place of Vidor. This event compelled the town to confront its reputation, and while the march was seen as a positive step by many, it faced opposition from some town residents and counter-protesters. Some Vidor residents have been active on social media in an attempt to challenge the perception that the town is racist, but even some of these posts carry subtle racist undertones. Vidor still has so much work to do, but the participation of many residents in the Black Lives Matter march offers hope that positive change may be on the horizon. Unfortunately, it appears that our discussion will continue to focus on issues in the southern United States. Number 4. California. Racism is not confined to the American South or rural areas with predominantly white populations. Even in the city of Los Angeles, which has its share racism, race riots, and sundown towns, it manages to avoid being included in such lists due to its sheer population size, which can obscure certain statistical trends. However, the same cannot be said for Fresno, California, which ranks as the state's fifth largest city. Fresno presents a stark contrast, resembling two distinct cities within one. The western half of Fresno comprises a majority of Latino residents and a significant black population. A cursory drive through this area reveals a city that appears to be overlooked and neglected, and this neglect cannot be attributed to its residents. One Fresno resident recalls enduring racial slurs from white teachers who made it clear that they did not view West Fresno as a desirable place to be. More than half of the population in West Fresno lives below the poverty line, in stark contrast to the rest of the city, where only 27% experience such economic hardship. A quick internet search exposes a city fraught with racial violence, allegation of racism within the school boards, and government negligence in neighborhoods primarily inhabited by people of color. Number 3. Leith, North Dakota. In 2012, a remote and otherwise modest town, inhabited by only 29 residents, gained notoriety when a white nationalist named Craig Cobb relocated to Leith and acquired to have 12 plots of land. This Aryan-focused incursion into the town was prominently featured in the PBS documentary titled Welcome to Leith. Cobb actively encouraged his followers to join him in Leith, and in 2018, they managed to secure the election of two of their white nationalist associates to the city council. This development was deeply distressing for the original Leith residents, who responded with protest and even petitioned Grand Country to dissolve Leith as a city in order to remove the white supremacist from office. Despite their efforts, Leith was not dissolved, and it continues to exist today. However, Craig Cobb has since sold his land and departed from the town. The lone black resident, Bobby Harper, revealed that his life was impended and filled with turmoil following the arrival of Craig Cobb and his white supremacist followers. Number 2. Anchorage, Alaska. Racism isn't limited to its impact on Black Americans, as the city also grapples with a somewhat hidden form of bias against Native Alaskans. Despite the fact that Alaska Natives constitute just 16% of the population, they account for 29% of all homicide victims, and Anchorage leads the way in this disturbing crime statistics. Meanwhile, the black population in Alaska, comprising only 4% of residents, constitute 10% of all homicide victims. Number 1. Harrison, Arkansas. Harrison is located in the Boone Country, situated in northern Arkansas, right near the Missouri border. This town has earned the unfortunate reputation of being labeled as the most racially biased community in the United States. This designation is deeply rooted in both its historical past and its contemporary issues. The town gained national attention when a viral video produced by Bob Bliss was cited holding a Black Lives Matter sign in America's most racist town. In response to the video, Harrison experienced 3 days of unpleasant incidents, including racial slurs, even though Bliss himself is white, and he even received direct death threats. While some residents have been actively challenging this reputation, it's an uphill battle when your town is known as the headquarters of mailing address for the Ku Klux Klan. Harrison's history also bears the scars of racial tensions. As a former slave state, Arkansas, the state in which Harrison is located, gained notoriety for harassing Harrison race riots of 1905 and 1909. That's it for today's video. Like and subscribe for more videos like this. Thank you for watching.